Glad to be with you today. Today is Tuesday morning, just 2 days away from Thanksgiving. But I'm glad to be with you today. And I want to remind you, especially for those in our area, that we move our midweek service on uh, Thanksgiving week. We move that to Tuesday night, and we have from the beginning of our church. We do that because a lot of times with Thanksgiving on Thursday, people will be traveling both into the area and out of the area on Wednesday. I can remember when we first made this change, schools let out a half a day on Wednesday. And so many of our teachers and students, when that half day was up, they took off to grandma's house. Well, we want to make it safe for them, and so we just move our midweek service. And tonight we will be having what we call Pie and Praise. We'll begin in the auditorium and have a time of praise and thanksgiving, and then we'll move downstairs to the fellowship hall for the time of pie. And so I hope you can be with us 7 o'clock tonight, and we'd love to have you. The service will not be long. It's a shorter service, but I think it will be a blessing. And so you come. You know, this is the season of Thanksgiving, and for a lot of people, this is their favorite holiday of the year. And some of them, it is for a specific reason, but for some, it is that idea that you know what day it's on every year. And not only that, but it is a time of remembering and thinking. Did you know Thanksgiving cost you a lot less than Christmas? And so some people get so caught up in the gift giving and all of that that somehow remembering Jesus just sort of gets lost. And we don't want that to happen for Thanksgiving. And so we're reminding us to remember. Let's just remember. And today we're going to be remembering. In fact, all of this week, our devotions are on remembering. And today we're going to talk about remembering where you came from. Do you remember where you came from? People ask me a lot of times, what's your hometown? Well, I'm glad to tell them because I love my hometown. I haven't lived there in a long, long time, but I love my hometown. It's been close to 60 years since I lived in my hometown, but it's still my hometown, and I love to go. I love to be there. I love to visit there and to go back to the sites of my boyhood. And some of them have changed, but in my mind, they're still there. And it's wonderful. Well, we're going to talk about that today. I hope you'll stay with us. You know, there was a little boy named John and in school, and Johnny was in, fourth grade, that kind of middle school now they call it, age bracket. And every day going into school and leaving school, he had a friend that he walked with, a little girlfriend he walked with. They weren't boyfriend and girlfriend like that, but they were always going, you could see them, they're walking together. And her name was Faith, and she was just a cute girl. And he liked to walk with her, and sometimes he would carry her books, but they would just laugh and talk as they walked along. And one of his friends at church said to him one day, said, Johnny, said, how come at school all the time, every time I see you, you're just walking with Faith all the time? Why are you doing that? He said, well, we were told here at church, we're supposed to walk by faith. Well, I guess that was a good enough reason for him. And so he was practicing what he was taught. We have a young lady that is the daughter of one of our members. Her name is Faith. And I think that's what her husband thought when he married her. He's just going to walk by faith. And he's been walking with Faith for a long time now. Our text is found in Psalm 137. And I want you to, you can either turn to it or just listen. By the rivers of Babylon, where we've sat down, Yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. We hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof, for there they that carried us away captive required of us a song, and they that wasted us required of us mirth, that is, humor, laughter. Sing us some of the songs of Zion, they said. And then the answer comes, how shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning. If I do not remember thee, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. If I prefer not Jerusalem above my chief joy, remember, O Lord, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it, destroy it, even to the foundation thereof. O daughter of Babylon, who art to be destroyed, happy shall he be that rewardeth thee, as thou hast served us. Happy shall he be that taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the stones. Notice this entire psalm is built around remembering. When we remembered Zion, then he says, if I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning. Now, I want you to understand what he's talking about there. He's talking about the music. And he began by saying, we hung our harps up. We didn't play our instruments anymore. We have a man in our church who I love to hear him play. He plays the 12-string guitar. He's what many would call a stylist, and beautiful playing. And it would be like him. Some time ago, he injured his hand and he could not play. And so he didn't play for several weeks that he could not play. And it was a little different. And what the psalmist is saying here is, if I do not remember Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its cunning. I don't want to play without Jerusalem in my mind. And what was it known for? The songs of Zion. This psalm was one written at the time of the Babylonian captivity, because he said, by the rivers of Babylon. It could have been at the time of Nehemiah, when word had come of the ruin of Jerusalem. It could have been at the time of Daniel and the 3 Hebrew children when they were first carried away. We do not know what time, but we do know that they are in the land of Babylon and reminiscing of home. Sometimes Christian people lose their song and do not know why. Their joy is gone, that happiness of the Christian life. I love that song that says, I found happiness when I found the Lord. And that's gone, and the excitement is gone. Some people come to Christ and it's no longer a thrill, and seeing the baptismal waters is not really that big a deal anymore. When this becomes the condition of the saved, they have been carried away. When they may not be in a foreign country, but they are no longer dwelling in Beulah land. Somebody said, you do not have to travel far to be far away. And how true that is. When we wander away from the place of our joy, then we are going to lose that song that we had at one time. And we need to look for it again. We need to remember the place of blessing and the place of spiritual victory. Walking with the Lord will keep us joyful and excited about things of the Lord wherever we are. The place called Zion that we find in this passage was a hill which was part of the hills of Jerusalem. But this one was captured and fortified, and often in Scripture you'll find that Zion is called the city of David because it was so close in proximity to Jerusalem, and being on that little hill, it was a captured place and it became known as that place. But it's a part of Jerusalem, a part of that area there, the hills there of Jerusalem. Psalm 48 is a psalm of Zion. In verse 1 of Psalm 48, it is called the city of our God. We know that God chose to put his name in Jerusalem, and Zion is encompassing all of that area there and is to be remembered. Why? Because it was the seat of where God had put his name. So when we think of it, it is synonymous with remembering the city of God, the city of the throne of the kings of Israel, and the temple where the seat of their worship took place, where there in the Holy of Holies, the Lord put his presence. And sometimes we drift from our close walk with the Lord. And when we are living in the world, with the world in mind, it is hard to sing the songs of Zion. We need to return in our hearts and minds to the place where the Lord met with us, saved us, called us, and fellowshiped with us. It is like Jacob returning to Bethel again. Notice in verse 1 of our text here in Psalm 137, when we remembered, when we paused a moment to remember, to think. Many times in the Bible, we are told to remember, like we talked about yesterday, remember now thy Creator. The Apostle Paul wrote to Timothy and said, when I call to remembrance. We need to have these things in our mind so that they are not stolen from us, and rehearse things in our mind. Some people have the privilege of living in the same town all their lives. They never move out of that area. We have people in our area here that's been the truth. They've been here all their life. They know people that I will never meet, and they know them, and they have talked with them. They know these people all their life. All their life has been lived here. Their work life, everything has been here. And some people have that privilege. I did not have that privilege. But for the growing up years of my life, we were in Pensacola, Florida. I love Pensacola. I was saved there. I was baptized there. I surrendered my life to the Lord there. From a natural perspective, that's where I learned to swim. It's where I learned to walk. It's where I learned to talk. Some people are sad about that part, but it's where I learned those things. I learned to fish there. I grew up with friends there, and I learned not to be afraid of everything. When I think of Pensacola, I remember those times. And when I go back to Pensacola, I drive by the church where my dad pastored in the 1950s and the church Dad pastored in the 1960s. I have memories there. I remember God's blessings. I remember when Dad pastored Brent Baptist Church there on St. John's in Pensacola, right off of Palafox, old Palafox Highway. And I can remember there we had tremendous meetings. Back in the day, we had Hyman Appleman in that building twice, and hundreds came. I remember a tent meeting that Dad had one time with an evangelist who came in, and that tent meeting lasted 6 weeks. Oh, I have wonderful memories of those things. And I drive by Faith Baptist out on Creighton Road, where we spent our last years in Pensacola up to my senior year. And I drive by there and I remember the blessings. That's the church in that building where I walked the aisle as a young teenager and surrendered my life when Canadian evangelist Walter Hughes was preaching. I'll never forget that service. It was a wonderful service. But I can also remember when we built that building. My dad and a man named Al Rupp and I were there when they poured the curb that went down around the driveway behind the building, down a hill and all this stuff. And right after it was poured, it came a big rain. And boy, when that rain was coming, Dad was afraid that entire curb was going to be washed out. So up on the upper level, Dad and Brother Rupp were up there, and they were putting hay bales up there around that and trying to secure that upper part. Dad sent me down to the bottom where it emptied out on the backside, and he said, "Son, you've got to keep that red mud clay there. You've got to keep that up against that curb. We'll lose that whole bottom." So I stood there as a young boy, about 13, 14 years old, with a shovel in my hand. I shoveled mud till I couldn't shovel anymore. But what a memory. I remember it now with joy. To me, it's kind of like the people remembering when Solomon built the temple. And it was a joyful thing. And when they were taken to Babylon, boy, all of those things came back to their minds. That place, that wonderful place where God had put his name. And we need to remember where God spoke to us. Do you remember where you were saved? Do you remember when God really was close to you? Do you remember when you were in fellowship with him in a deep way? And do you remember the place where it was like his song was in your heart? That's what the psalmist is talking about. He said, we remember. I remember Zion. And if I forget Zion, I don't want to play the music. I don't want to try to just participate. I want it to be in my heart and in my mind, that place of walking with God. Remember that place. Return to it with your heart, and you'll find that you've just returned to Zion. The child of God cannot sing the songs of joy while walking the path of sorrow in the world. We may be experiencing sorrow, but if we're walking with God, it's not the path of sorrow. I remember what God has done. Do you remember what he did for you? Let's remember that today, and let's go back to Zion. God bless you today is my prayer. I hope you'll join with us again.